Buongiorno. Well, that was fun being outside for a little while. Uh, I got to get, if I do that again, I'm going to have to get a little closer to the Wi Fi hotspot because the video quality wasn't as good as it should be. It was really kind of bizarre because it's not very far away from the router. But anyway, it is what it is. That was fun to go outside, and you can see what a nutcase I am in real life. Uh, One thing I wasn't able to show you on myself from out there is some of these body cavities. There's basically two main ones: the the dorsal cavity. All right, so now we know the dorsal means toward the back, and the ventral cavity that is toward the front. The dorsal cavity contains the cranial cavity, which in most people has a brain, or at least it should be. Should be one there. Sometimes some of the things I see on Facebook or the people I see driving on the highway make me wonder what is inside that cranial cavity of theirs. Then we have the vertebral cavity where the spinal cord is. And it's relatively, as far as space is concerned, fairly small portion of the body. The anterior cavity is broken down into the thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic. You can see that over here too. Thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic. The boundary between thoracic and abdominal is the diaphragm, or muscle right here, dome-shaped muscle. And sometimes these two are grouped together into the abdominal pelvic cavity. You can see written right here. All right, we're calling this the ventral cavity. Can't see what they're calling it over there, but I'll bet you they're calling it the dorsal. Wouldn't be wrong to call them anterior and posterior. The thoracic cavity is further subdivided into the mediastinum. This is where some of the major blood vessels roll through, the esophagus, the trachea. On the right and left sides, we have the pleural cavities, which house the lungs. And then we have the pericardial cavity, which is where we find the heart in those people that have them. In the abdominal cavity is mostly the organs of digestion and some of the organs of the urinary system, the kidney and ureters. And the pelvic cavity contains the gonads. So that's the end of language of anatomy. Now, here I would suggest that the following, what I'm going to do, goes along with the organ system survey list that's on your lab handouts. A couple of pages there of things that actually sound like anatomy. I would suggest that you actually physically print that out. And so people like to take notes. Students that do really well on this section in the lab will print out the list of parts to know. And you can't tell me this doesn't sound like anatomy, because it sure looks like anatomy to me. But then in their own words, like I say in the study tip section, it's important that when you make these things, you write what it means to you in your own words, a little blurb next to the term. So the first term is epidermis. So if I was you, I would stop the presentation, go print the list, and then come back. All right? I'll wait. I'll be right here. Okay, you're back? Great. All right, the first word on the list is epidermis. Epi, the prefix epi means above or on top of dermis. So this is a skin model. This region down here, this is all mostly fat. This is not really considered part of the skin. The skin is this part up here. And the majority, this sort of fleshy colored area, is called the dermis. And this darker colored area up here is the epidermis. And the boundary is this layer right here. And we'll talk about the different layers of the epidermis when we get to the skin chapter. So this is the epidermis. This is the dermis. Now this stuff down here, this yellow stuff, this represents adipose tissue, otherwise known as fat. And you can see from the previous video, I got a little bit of that hanging out. I need to go work out again this afternoon. Didn't get to it yesterday, but I will today, I hope. So this is not really part of the skin, like I said. So this is another word for skin is cutaneous region. And so below the skin is the subcutaneous region. Another term for this area of the body is the hypodermis. Hypo, below the dermis. So we have the epidermis above or on top of the dermis. We have the dermis itself, and then the hypodermis, also known as the subcutaneous region. You may have visions of eventually at work giving somebody an injection with a hypodermic needle, a subcutaneous injection. Those are the nice ones. The intramuscular, within the muscle, those hurt a little more. All right, so the next one on the list is the sebaceous gland. The sebaceous gland is the oil gland associated with the hair. So here is a hair follicle. It's called a hair when it emerges from the skin. Now, of course, there's another name for hair. We'll get to the official name later. So this looks like a bag of grapes or something here. This is the sebaceous gland. There's another one over here. It's cut away a little bit so we can see underneath it. Sorry about that. Sneeze when I'm making a presentation. So the sebaceous gland completely surrounds the hair follicle and delivers oil, which helps lubricate and secrete, and it's also got antimicrobial properties. So that's one type of gland, the oil gland, but we're going to call it the sebaceous gland. Over here in white, we have a regular old eccrine sweat gland. You'll see in parentheses merocrine. That is the method of secretion. The real name should be eccrine gland, although some books will just label it merocrine. Eccrine is what we want to call it. It's a regular old sweat gland found everywhere on the body. Here's one here. It makes the sweat, which is modified blood plasma, which goes through this duct, D-U-C-T, duct or tube, to be released onto the surface of the skin. Here's another one over here. It's cut away. So we can see little tubes here, and then we can see the duct. And here's a third one. Now this skin model is here's another one that's intact. This skin model is one of the exact models we have in our lab. It's broken down into 3 different types of skin. Most skin is represented over here. If you could read down here, it would say the hairy skin of the skin of the scalp, the head. But it's not just your head, it's your head, your arms, your legs, your belly, your back. In a couple of special areas, we have a different kind of gland, this thing represented by this thing here. And that's in the inguinal and axillary regions. Inguinal and axillary regions. So that's the groin and the armpit. And this is called the apocrine gland. Now I take issue with this model. The apocrine gland does not surround the hair like a sebaceous gland does. Its duct pours into the hair follicle, though. The apocrine gland secretes molecules associated with sexual maturity, which is also produces stinky-smelling molecules. The apocrine gland. We already talked about the hair follicle. Now we have some corpuscles. A corpuscle is an older term for a spherically or something that appears spherical in shape, like a ball or a disc. Look on from the side, and you'll see we have 2 of them. The first one are these up here that are in these little folds in the dermis, and these are called tactile corpuscles. They used to be named after a guy named Meissner, and they used to be called Meissner's corpuscles. But a couple of years ago, they decided they were going to change them to tactile corpuscle because they're involved in the fine sense of touch. They're very close to the surface of the body, just millimeters away. So that's where our sense of touch comes from, these. Then we get down deeper into the hypodermis. I only see one in this picture. This one here used to be called the Pacinian corpuscle, named after somebody named Pacin. And now we're going to call it the lamellar corpuscle. If you could see the picture better, you'd see it looks like it's got layers. Lamellar means layered. And this is involved in a deeper sense of touch and vibration. Let's move on to the skeleton. Hide that. I don't know if you can see that or not. So the mandible is the jawbone, lower jawbone. Here's the mental region. Here's the frontal region. Here's the orbit where the eyes are, the nasal region. Up here, the upper jawbone and the cheeks. This is called the mandible. I'm not sorry, maxilla. Maxilla. The mandible is down here, and the maxilla is the upper jawbone and up and around the nose. Now, the vertebrae. We have 3 different kinds of vertebrae, and I don't yet have the technology to show you how to differentiate one from the other. So right now, you'll just have to remember vertebrae. Vertebra, which is really unfortunate because it's one of the funner things to do in the very beginning of class, be able to tell which type of vertebra it is. Is it a cervical associated with the neck, a thoracic associated with the ribs, or a lumbar lower down in the vertebral column? Here we have the sternum in the sternal region. The collarbone right here is the clavicle. And the arm bone, the up bone in the upper arm, is the humerus. Now, this is not going to be on your first lab exam, but this is just a sort of where we're headed kind of thing. The sternum has 3 different parts. You can't see the part down below. The humerus, all these bones have markings. For instance, we have the greater and lesser tubercles, and between them we have a groove called the intertubercular groove, which is where a tendon resides. So in the next section, we're going to learn a lot more about these bones. Right now, we're just introducing you to the bones. Let's see. So the humerus is the bone in the upper arm. Here's another humerus over here. Here's a view of the clavicle. The shoulder blade is the scapula. You can see it's got all manner of parts too. This is called the acromion process. This is why the shoulder area is called the acromial area. Here we have cervical vertebrae, thoracic vertebrae, and the lumbar vertebrae. What else we got here? Here we have an arm. So in the arm, we have the humerus. Notice that the proximal end is different than the distal end. So we have the humerus, then we have the radius, and we have the ulna. If you were to take somebody's radial pulse, you would palpate their radial artery against this part of the radius, and you'd be able to feel the pulse come by. Here we have the carpals, the wrist bones. Each one of these wrist bones has its own name. We'll worry about it later. The bones of the hands are the metacarpals. And then we have the fingers, which are phalanges. And you see that each finger has 1, 2, 3 bones, whereas the thumb only has 2. Now look at your hand, look at your thumb. All right, here's your thumb, the pollex. All right, here is the associated metacarpal. It's part of the palm of the hand, not part of the thumb. These are all part of the palm of your hand. And we'll just call these phalanges for now. We'll come back to those later. Here we have in the leg, we have the largest bone in the body is the femur. You can't see the rest of it. This is just the distal end of the femur. We have the kneecap, which is known as the patella, hence the term patellar region. The big bone in the lower leg is the tibia, and the little bone on the side of the leg is the fibula. Learn how to spell those words right. Tibia, fibula. The tibia in the lower leg, the tibia is medial to the fibula. The fibula is lateral. Then we get the ankle bones. The bones of the ankle are called the tarsals with a T. Tarsals. So here they are, and they each have their own name. And we'll get to that in the next section. Then we have the arch of the foot are the metatarsals. Metatarsals. And then the toes, the piggies, are the also we'll call them phalanges for now. The big toe or great toe has its own name, the hallux. So this little piggy went to the market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef. This little piggy had none. This little piggy went wee, 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 all the way home. All right, so that's the skeletal system. A quick preview of the muscular system. Orbicularis is a name for a round muscle. Orbicularis. Orbicularis oculi, the muscle around the eye socket. Orbicularis oris, the round muscle, circular muscle around the lips. You contract your orbicularis oris, you'll get duck lips. Don't do that. Then we have this muscle here, the sternocleidomastoid. It's a big muscle that you can only see in people that are way too thin. The sternocleidomastoid, we'll come to it in the third section later on in lab, but it gets named for it's attached to the sternum, sterno, the clavicle, cleido, and up here the mastoid process right behind the ear. So sternocleidomastoid. But let's just call it that for now, this main muscle in the neck. We look at the arm muscle. We see there's a lot of muscles in the arm. We'll get to those. We're just going to look at two of them. You could probably have seen my massive Dwayne Johnson-like biceps in that previous video. This is the biceps brachii. It's got two names, biceps brachii. Another biceps muscle. So we have to call this biceps because that means there's two heads. Brachii, because the name of the region for the upper arm is brachial region. It splits up here in the shoulder. It's got two heads, and one of them goes through that groove I pointed out just a minute ago. So biceps, two heads, brachii in the upper arm. And then this muscle here is the triceps brachii. And just as a preview, these muscles are said to be antagonistic to each other. If you look at the way this is set up, when the biceps brachii contracts, the elbow is going to flex. It's going to pull on a little part of the radius down here, flex the elbow. The opposite motion, extending the elbow, is performed by the biceps brachii. There's other muscles that do both, but so, this right here is a view of the medial aspect of the left arm. The medial aspect of the left arm. If we look over here, this top diagram is the medial. No, I just said that. Lateral aspect. Lateral aspect. You know what happens when you sit here and talk to yourself all day. Lateral aspect of the left arm. And here, see a little bit of the biceps brachii up here. You'll see these three heads. 1, 2, 3 of the triceps brachii. 1, 2, 3 heads. Triceps brachii, biceps brachii. We look at this guy here. They actually used me as a model for this. Sure they did. They did not. All right, let's take a look at a couple of muscles here. This one we hadn't seen yet. These are the six-pack muscles. They are called the rectus abdominis. And rectus describes how the muscle pulls, and because there's another rectus muscle, there's one right there. But what else can we see? So now everybody has these six-pack muscles, and you're not going to ever see them by doing sit-ups. The only way to get somebody to get these abdominal muscles to pop out is to lower your body. Yep, Sorry, there's no other way about it. You got to get down real low before you can see them, maybe under 15% body fat. I'm not telling you where I am at right now. What other muscles have we gone through that you can see here? Here's a biceps brachii. Here's another biceps brachii. Sternocleidomastoid. Now this muscle here is called the rectus femoris. I don't think I covered that in the region chat we had outside, but the name for the upper part of the leg, the thigh region, is femoral, the femoral region. The femoral artery runs right about here. This muscle right here is the biceps femoris. Femoris, named for the region it's found in, femoral region. This is the longest muscle in the body right there, the sartorius. We'll get to it later. And what else? So I want to know who thought it was a good idea to put this guy on a stand with the stand going right there. Doesn't that look a little silly and uncomfortable? All right, the muscles of the legs. What else we have here? We saw rectus femoris. That is this one. And now that you might say, is that the quadriceps muscle? It's not. There is no muscle called the quadriceps. The quadriceps muscle is made of 4 muscles, hence the term quad. Biceps femoris is one of them. This one, and one underneath here, or deep to the biceps femoris, are the 4 that make up the quadriceps, which then have the quadriceps tendon attaching it to the patella right there. On the lateral aspect of the back of the leg, that's over here, we have the biceps femoris. So it's also got 2 heads. Can't see them real well here in the picture. And it's in the femoral region, so biceps femoris. And then we have 2 more muscles over here. One is on top, one is on bottom. This one here is superficial. You can see on both sides. There's another one underneath it that's deeper. We'll come up with those names later. These 3 muscles make up what we call the hamstrings. The muscle in the calf, this one right here. This is the weird, it's a weird word. It's easier to spell than it sounds when you pronounce it correctly. It is the gastrocnemius. The gastrocnemius. The calf muscle. And there's another important muscle underneath there. Do you remember the name for the back of the knee? Front of the knee is patellar. What's the name for the back of the knee? Popliteal. Right, you got it. And one last muscle, one of my little favorites, is called the flexor digitorum brevis. It's not in the lab manual. This is one of those things that you must be present to win, because I'm going to tell you about it. It's flexor digitorum brevis. So it flexes the digit toes, and it's the short one. It's on the bottom of the foot down here. This is a muscle that runs in, has an outer coating, the plantar fascia, that can become inflamed. So flexor digitorum brevis. All right, let's go through the heart. I have a heart. The heart has 4 chambers, 2 superior chambers and 2 inferior chambers. All right. The 2 superior chambers are called the atria. Atria, that's plural. Each individual chamber is an atrium. Remember, it's anatomical position and described as if it's in the patient. So this one here is the right atrium. Over here is a left atrium. What is an atrium? It must mean something, right? I mean, what does it mean? It means in a building, an atrium is a reception area. 2 of the most impressive atria, the plural of atrium, that I've visited, or one visited it's been a while, but the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Dallas has a rather impressive atrium. When you walk in there, you can see big chandeliers and lots of tall glass. It goes up many stories. There's an elevator that runs up through along the wall of the atrium. I remember when I first saw that, I was like, wow. That's actually the most impressive one I've seen. But I did, when I was visiting New York City, go to Trump Tower, and went to the atrium there. And that's a pretty nice building too. Atrium is a reception area in a building. And the atria are the receiving chambers of the heart. Blood comes back from the body or the lungs and comes to one of these atria. So we have the right atrium, the left atrium. The inferior chambers are the ventricles. A ventricle is singular, ventricles are all. That's nice and easy. We have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. The right ventricle pumps blood to the lungs through the pulmonary trunk, right here. The left ventricle pumps blood to the rest of the body right through that valve called the aortic valve to the aorta, and then goes out to the rest of the body. So the left side of the heart has to work a lot harder. It's got a lot of thicker muscle that you can see here. Then we have a set of 4 valves in the heart that help make sure that blood flow goes in only one direction, unidirectional. Between each atrium and each ventricle is an AV valve. That AV stands for atrioventricular. Atrioventricular. So this over here is the right AV valve. This over here is the left AV valve. And now guess what? The good news is they have more than one name. I told you you would love this. I get that it needs a name, but let's just stick to one, shall we? This one over here has 3 flaps that help it close. So it gets called the tricuspid. This one over here only has 2 flaps. So it gets called bicuspid. And then this one over here also has a 3rd name. All right. Now at that point, I'm starting to get upset. All right. 2 names is bad enough. 3 names is, you got to be kidding me. But it gets its name. It's the mitral valve. The mitral valve. You may have heard of it. Mitral valve. And what happens is when the ventricles contract, these valves shut. So blood doesn't go back into the atria, but it goes out the ventricles through these other valves. This one is called the aortic valve or aortic semilunar. It's been more conventional these days to drop the semilunar. Together you would call them the semilunar valves. This one would be the aortic because it guards the entrance to the aorta. This one is the pulmonary because it guards the entrance to the pulmonary artery. And so what about this one? 3 names. All right, so we see structurally it's in between the atrium and the ventricle, so AV makes sense. Also structurally, it's got 2 flaps, so bicuspid. Okay, I get that, but mitral valve? What in the world is that? Where did that come from? Well, let's see if I can figure this part out. I don't know how well this will work. Go to Google Images. I don't think you can see this yet. Oh. Oh, there it is. It gets its name. Oh, I have to share this again so you can see it. Hey, I'm learning as I go along here. Well, that's unfortunate. Where'd it go? Not gonna let me do that. Bummer. It gets its name from the shape of a hat that the Pope wears. So search on mitre and you will see something familiar. Somebody looked at that and thought, well, that looks like an upside down mitre, the kind of hat that the Pope and some other priest types wear during formal activities. All right, what else do we have here? Here's another view of the heart. Now this one, the atria aren't open. The right atrium would be up here. Pull that open and look. The left atrium would be over here. We see the left ventricle, the right ventricle. See the right AV or tricuspid valve. We see the left AV, bicuspid. We can see there's two flaps here, or mitral valve. We see a little bit of the aortic semilunar valve and a little bit of the pulmonary semilunar valve. We have the pulmonary trunk, which then lead to the pulmonary arteries. I don't think those are not on your list. Here we have the aorta. As it comes out of the heart, notice how both of these great arteries, pulmonary trunk and the aorta, both exit the heart superiorly. We have the ascending aorta, the aortic arch, and then the descending aorta, but that's coming up later in your life. But what about these three branches, the first three branches off the aorta? Bam, bam. Well, you can't see that. I need my laser pointer. Shoot. All right, so back to what I was just saying. Right ventricle, left ventricle, right atrium would be in there, left atrium would be in there, aortic semilunar, pulmonary semilunar, pulmonary trunk, aorta, ascending aorta, aortic arch, descending aorta, mitral valve, tricuspid valve, and then these three things, these blood vessels right here. This is the brachiocephalic, the common carotid or left common carotid, and then the subclavian, left subclavian. So how are you going to remember those? Here they are. Well, they have brachiocephalic, carotid, subclavian. That's enough to buy you a right answer. One of these is going to get labeled on your lab exam. So how are you going to figure it out? And it won't be one that has B for brachiocephalic or C for carotid. That's just bizarre. That won't be labeled because that's D. This just goes to whatever answer key to this model, but it comes in alphabetical order. B, C, S. B, C, S. Brachiocephalic, carotid, subclavian. Bam. How about that? Here's another view. Pulmonary trunk, aorta, B, C, S. And let's jump back here real quick. These are the pulmonary veins. You might say, wait, they're red. Yes, they're coming back. The pulmonary veins come back from the lungs and bring oxygen-rich blood back to the left side of the heart to be pumped out to the body. So that's why they're red. The digestive system. The digestive system, we have the parotid salivary glands. We cannot see. We have to see a different view of that. The esophagus, just posterior to the trachea, leads to the stomach, which then empties into the small intestine. And also the pancreas is right underneath the stomach right here. It also secretes some juices, digestive juices, pancreatic juice it's called, into the small intestine. And then the small intestine generally is broken down into three different parts. But we can't really tell which part is which from this model, so we'll just leave it at small intestine. The small intestine then empties into the large intestine right here. There's a little valve there. There's actually three valves along the way. There's one right here on the entrance to the stomach. There's one right here at the exit to the stomach. And there's one right here in between the small and large intestine. And then we get the ascending colon. Another term for large intestine is colon. Then we get the transverse. Now you know that this is the transverse direction. We have the longitudinal axis, and 90 degrees, the longitudinal axis, is transverse. So this is a transverse colon. Then we got the descending colon. And then where it starts to take a little S-shaped turn, right about here. It turns and goes to the back, makes another turn, comes this way. This is the sigmoid colon. Sigmoid is a term that refers to S. It takes a little shape change here. sigmoid colon, and then that leads to the rectum, and then the anus, where through which feces are ejected. Accessory organs: the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder right there. The urinary system. Here's the urinary system somewhat by itself. We have this represents the it's the descending aorta in the thoracic cavity, and then when it goes through the diaphragm, it becomes the descending aorta. This would be the inferior vena cava, going back to the heart. Renal veins here and here, and we see here's a kidney, here's another kidney. We see an adrenal gland associated with each kidney. Each kidney drains into a ureter on both sides, which empty into the urinary bladder and then exit by way of the urethra. So ureter and urethra are similar words, so try not to get those confused. Here's the urinary system in the background of some other tissues: kidney, ureter, urinary bladder, and the exit to the urethra. Here we have the descending aorta and the inferior vena cava, and a couple of extra large adrenal glands. Then the last system, reproductive system, the male reproductive system. We have the testes. That's what they're called. Okay. Now, when I give lab exams and people are a little bit confused, sometimes I get the strangest answers. Okay, it's not the answer is not what you call it amongst your friends. It's the medical term. The testes are contained in the scrotum, which is the sac where we find the testes. The testes are the actual gonad that produce the sperm and the testosterone, the hormone testosterone. We have, to orient yourself here is the urinary bladder. Here's the urethra. It would come in, empty in about here. Here's part of the sigmoid colon, the rectum, and the anus. Now here's the urinary bladder. Urine leaves through the urethra to exit the body. The urethra goes through the prostate gland. Now on your list, you have seminal vesicle. It's not shown on this diagram. It'd be over here somewhere, where that produces a lot of the actual fluids that make up the semen. It joins in with the urethra inside the prostate, and then as it rolls along this way, and we can't see it in this diagram either, the vas deferens, not on the list, brings the sperm. It joins the fluids from the seminal vesicle, and then exits also through the urethra. Sperm and urine cannot go at the same time. So that is true. Now, the head of the penis is what you might call the head of the penis. It's called the glans penis. And the covering or foreskin around the outside that this model happens to have is called a prepuce. A prepuce is the foreskin. Oftentimes, little boys, infant boys, will get the prepuce cut off in a process known as circumcision. And in a circumcision, the prepuce or foreskin is removed. And then last, certainly but not least, the female reproductive tract. Can't really see the ovaries. Maybe right here. It's hard to tell from this view. I still don't have access to my mastering site. Here's the female urinary bladder and the female urethra. So the ovary would ovulate the egg. It would get caught by that end of the fallopian, or now uterine tube, transported to the uterus, and then if it's the sperm would be delivered from this direction. This is the vagina, and they would meet in here somewhere, and then the baby would grow inside the uterus, of course. Here's the sigmoid colon. Here's the rectum. Here's the anus. It doesn't look like there's much room in there for a baby, right? So if you've had a baby, you've been pregnant, and you understand that you feel like you got to pee all the time, but you can't, just a couple drops come out. That's because the enlarging baby inside the uterus is pushing and squishing the urinary bladder. If you feel like you got to go to defecate or number two all the time and you can't, it's because the baby is pushing on your rectum and it clogs things up and makes it difficult for the feces to pass through. If you haven't had babies yet, you're female and you haven't had any babies, you're like, yep, well, I'm looking forward to that. You've heard the stories. If you're female and you've had a baby, you're like, yep, he's telling them 100% truth. If you're a guy and you're not going to have a baby, here's some of the best advice I can ever give you. The growing baby will make it so that she wants to pee all the time, but she can't. She feels like she needs to poop all the time, but she can't. And it's your fault. That's your baby. Under no circumstances utter the words, well, you wanted to get pregnant. Figure out something like that works for you and just roll with it. Like, I'm sorry, honey, can I rub your feet? I'm sorry, honey, can I get you a glass of tea? You got to be nice because when things are bad, it's your baby that's causing the problems. All right? If we were live in lab, I would look around the classroom and I'd say, am I telling the truth, ladies? And all the ladies would shout, yep, yep, yep. Guys, that's some of the best advice you ever had. And so with that concludes the organ system survey, and you now have your work cut out for you. The other day when I was saying that time management is the key, I think you're starting to be able to tell that I was being serious, and I want you to succeed. So the time to start managing your time well is now. And you can also see that you're really not going to have a lot of spare time this weekend. In order to get spare time, you have to really be a magician at managing your spare time. But all the tricks, all the things I tell you, they're because I want you to succeed. I want you to succeed. I want to see good grades. That would be wonderful. That would make your day. That would make my day. So let's make that happen, all right? So until then, till next time, which will be the microscope, arrivederci.